Good evening. Welcome. This is going to be the first of what I hope will be many events together. Where this all goes depends on who shows up, and you're all here, so we're already off to a good start. Let me start by telling you why I'm here. I, like you, am not happy with where our country is headed and have felt both an urge to do something about it and powerless at times to make a difference. But two of my sons have been showing me differently, and so we have them to thank for this. One could be at any frontier AI lab right now. Instead, he's chosen to work in government, advocating for progressive tech policy. The other is an active student organizer showing up early and often for those who need it most. I watch them and ask myself, what am I waiting for? A good friend made it worse. He looked at me and said, Mark, you talk a great game. You share all the TikToks, but what are you actually putting at risk? Stand up, step in. So he was right. So here we are. But I didn't want to just add my voice to all the noise. There's plenty of that. There's plenty of folks tilting at windmills. I wanted to actually find a place and a platform where people like us could have real relevance and agency, where we could actually have credibility and matter. The loudest voices in tech right now don't look or sound like the people I've spent 30 years working alongside. The people I know believe in equality and diversity, in healthcare as a human right, in body autonomy, in actual democracy. They're angry that tech has been painted as the enemy of those values because we know it doesn't have to be. That voice of sane progressive values in tech has been drowned out, and that is what I believe has to change. And here's what I believe and where I think Tech for Democracy can focus and actually have impact. Technology is the operating system of our democracy. Healthcare, housing, elections, education, immigration, criminal justice, you name it, it all runs on software now. And the people with the skills to understand it and the values to fight for it have never been more needed. The politicians regulating this technology largely don't understand how it works. I've seen a lot of those TikToks. The tech leaders who stepped into that vacuum don't share our values. And that's the gap. And that's exactly where I believe we can matter. Our power lies with what we know and what we can build together as builders. And the goal is simple: get more tech native progressives, people like the ones in this room, better informed, more empowered, and in the rooms where those decisions get made. So here's what we're going to do tonight. First, you're going to hear from a candidate who proudly wears the badge of software engineer and progressive, someone who believes technical literacy isn't a liability in politics. It's the whole point. Second, we're going to hear from an entrepreneur building a company grounded in data privacy and user agency, proof that the values we're talking about can also be a great business model. And third, you're going to hear from an organizer who knows how to turn people who care into people who act. Lastly, we'll talk about what you can actually do, because there is a lane for everybody here, and we're going to help you find it. And to be clear, this is not a presentation. This I'm viewing as a first working session, really an MVP of what I hope we can do together and build together. Thank you for being here. So let's get into it and let's welcome our first guest. I want to introduce Alex Borez. Alex is a lifelong progressive and technologist running for Congress in New York 12. If he's elected, when he's elected, he'll be the first Democrat with a graduate degree in computer science. After working in tech and a few startups, he got elected to the New York State Assembly in 2023 to represent the Upper East Side. In Albany, he's made a career out of smart regulation on technical issues, metadata standards, government cloud computing, and of course, the strongest AI regulation bill in the country, law in the country. He's deeply committed to making sure the government can deliver on its progressive promises, and perhaps most importantly, and for full disclosure, he is my son Henry's boss. Alex, welcome. Great to finally meet you.
It's great to meet you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for building this community where people can be progressive and tech native. We need a lot more of this. But most importantly, thank you for Henry, because we certainly wouldn't have been able to pass all the bills that we did without him. So thank you.
Well, his mother is on the call and she appreciates that greatly. Alex, why do you think it's important for our elected officials to understand tech? Like, what happens when they don't? What can it mean when they do?
Well, when they don't, we end up either not dealing with the threats that are there or missing opportunities to really serve people better. And we pass bills that end up getting in the way of getting things done, and sometimes have answers that aren't real answers, that we act like we solved the problem. I mean, the work that you referenced around deep fakes, where I was helping to promote a industry standard, open metadata standard, an open source standard. That was one where it was like this could work with every system already natively. What you saw a lot of states do instead was start to put like weird disclosure requirements state by state in places that don't actually tell us if something's a deep fake or not. So having people understand technology means regulations that actually meet the goals that you are trying to achieve.
Yeah. You have a bunch of internet OGs on the call tonight, people who really did participate in the very first wave way back when. And we all remember that it started as a progressive platform, a democratization of access and everyone's a publisher kind of thing. It was supposed to accrue to all the benefit, but doesn't really feel like we've gotten there. So like, how did we get where we are and what can we do about it?
I think it's a story that is happened again and again outside of technology, but feels new because it's happening within technology, which is a concentration of power. Right, the internet was this big democratizing force where anyone could do anything. As you said, everyone's a publisher, and instead we ended up with a few closed wall ecosystems that have really become a few major platforms through which most people interact with things digitally. And that's not to say that that can't also be something that's empowering for people. But when there is concentrated power, that's often when you need government regulation to push back and to keep people safe and keep people protected. And so we have been slow in having the regulations that match the level of power concentration that we're seeing.
Yeah, so I mean that's an important point to pick on because we are pro tech. We are optimists. We want more tech. We want more innovation. We want more growth. How can you balance being pro tech and also regulating it?
Absolutely. I mean, tech should create incredible opportunities. It should not just from a purely economic standpoint opportunity, but tech is truly innovative. It lets us do things that we couldn't imagine before. And I think it's quite progressive to want those benefits out into the public to help people's lives. You just need to make sure that that's actually what's happening and that it's not just accruing to a small few that are getting wealthy where everyone else ends up worse off. And so we can and should be deeply focused on growing the pie and making sure that it's going to everyone. And those two are not in conflict. In fact, they work incredibly well together.
So how do you see that, particularly with respect to AI? I know that is the epicenter of a lot of your campaign. What's the future look like for equality and opportunity with AI, do you
Yeah.
think?
When I'm trying to get in a 5 second debate answer, I say I want AI that helps doctors diagnose disease, not help insurance deny claims. Like there is so much potential for AI, whether that's in curing diseases, if that's in just automating some of the routine monotony of life, of making it so much easier for people to try new ideas, to get access to information, to build things. That's all really, really exciting. You do again have a few dominant platforms. You also have so much disruption that is going to come from that, and there's always disruption with new innovation. But is this going to happen at a scale that society and speed that society isn't prepared for? And where are we going to be on the other side of that? So if AI becomes a thing that is accessible to everyone, remains accessible to everyone when we're perhaps the VC subsidy that is happening now in AI, and gives people access to opportunities they didn't have before, that is a wonderful future. If it's instead used by the people who are already powerful to cement their power, or if it's charging an exponential amount in ways that really only the rich can access it, or a few other scenarios we could talk about, then that's one to avoid.
So you have people on the call tonight who are actually building these products and have their hands, fingers on keyboards. How do you think, what's your message to us and those who are actually in the fight and building stuff today?
Well, I think stay in the fight and bring your values to the work. The future is being written right now. You are building the future, and I would love to have that built by people that share progressive values and who are thinking about what the broad impact of all of this could be. I would also say to you said it beautifully in your introduction, Mark, about how there's certain parts of the tech ecosystem that are claiming to speak for everyone in tech
Yeah.
and have this fairly right-wing, conservative, regressive view that clearly does not represent everyone in tech, doesn't represent the majority of people in tech. And so being able to do your job to build these products and to speak your values and be loud about that, I can help show people that this can be a progressive project if done right.
Yep. That's a wonderful segue, but I have two more questions for you. One is, how do you define progressive?
It's a great question. I go back to actually stealing from John Rawls' definition of a classic liberal and thinking about the broadest expansion of rights that are consistent with everyone having those rights, and that any inequality that occurs has to benefit the least among us. So you can have capitalism, you can have a growth, but your focus, your lens is on helping to build up everyone, and a particular attention to those who might be disadvantaged, whether that's economically, politically, or otherwise. I want to make progress for everyone. I want to ensure that society is moving forward. And to do that, you can do that by growing the pie, as long as you're making sure that it is going to people who might be disadvantaged.
Great. Alex, what do people need to know about your campaign and how, if they choose to support you, they can?
That I'm running in a district that is a Democrat plus 33 district. So the primary is the race, and the primary is in 12 days, 1 hour and 42 minutes. And early voting starts this Saturday. So if you're in New York 12, which is the middle of Manhattan, East River to the Hudson River, from about 12th Street to 114th Street, make sure you have a plan to vote. If you have friends that live there, reach out to them, let them know that this election is happening. We have a chance to send the second Democrat ever in Congress with a degree in computer science, the first with a graduate degree in computer science to Congress, and that's an opportunity. And if you find yourself, if you're nearby and can come out and canvass, you find yourself with time to phone bank, or you find yourself in a place where you can contribute, we are neck and neck right now, me and the other main competitor, 26% each, with another 26% undecided. And so every single vote's going to count. This is a critical time to make a difference. And you can find out a lot more on my website, including links to get involved, alexboris.nyc.
Alex, thank you. Keep Henry late tonight. He can do it. Thank you for your time, and thank you for running, and best of luck.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
That was a lot of fun. Thank you so much, Alex. So we're now going to transition to a demo, and I think a lot about showcasing that we can build really cool shit too. So we are pro tech and we are pro innovation, but we also understand why people booing AI at graduations aren't necessarily wrong. They're watching technology that could liberate them being deployed to extract from them instead. And that's not a technology problem, it's actually a values problem. And it's exactly why we want to shine the light on builders who are innovating with values rooted in these progressive principles. And so tonight we're going to see a demo of Intention from founder and CEO Conor Sanchez-O'Shea. Conor has a long history at the intersection of tech and progressive values. He launched the Model Y at Tesla. I think he drove the first one off the assembly line. This was before Elon became today's Elon. And he did found a voter engagement organization focused on turning people out to vote that mobilized more than 1 million Gen Zers, earning accolades from Michelle Obama and more. Conor, take it away.
Thank you so much, Mark, and thank you for putting this on tonight. Hi, everyone. Like Mark said, my name is Conor Sanchez-O'Shea. I am the co-founder and CEO of Intention. We're based here in New York City, in the 12th district, actually. So before I show you this demo tonight, I want to give you a bit of color on why we're building what we're building, and I think it'll make a bit more sense. So to start, in 2004, the average attention span on a single screen was just 2.5 minutes. And today it's 47 seconds. So I'm running up on losing half of you already right now. And that's not your fault. It's actually the point of everything that I'm about to say. Every one of us lives in this gap between what we intend to do and what actually happens. And I see this in my own life. I intend to spend more time working out. I intend to spend less time on my phone. Um, we all have our version of this. It took me 10 years to see it, but every job that I've had in tech and in politics has ended up being about this gap. In my personal life, I see this in the moments where I'm with my friends and they disappear into their phone, and the moment that we're supposed to share is gone. With our communities, we see this with the social networks that we joined 10 or 20 years ago that were supposed to keep us close, turn us against our neighbors. And at scale, we see these builders who intended to maybe do good things have these platforms that are doing quite a bit of harm now. And that's been the story of the last 20 years of technology. And so 2 years ago, I was the head of growth at this company called Humane. Their vision was a world beyond the smartphone. And they started with this device called the AI pin, one of the first AI native devices. This category is something that everyone else is building towards now. Meta, OpenAI, even Apple. Humane was just really early. And they diagnosed something real. Our relationship with technology is broken. The product was ahead of its time, but the moment isn't ahead of its time any longer. As technology becomes more ambient, more passive, more personalized, it's redirecting our attention and our intents. And you can't opt out if you want to participate in modern life. What I took away from that experience was that it's deeper than any one device. It's about the flow of information through our lives. And this is driven by the incentives that we don't have any control over and we have no path to controlling. Humane was just the most recent example of seeing this in my career. A couple of others were when I was 18. I started at Tesla, as Mark said, in a showroom in Massachusetts and worked my way out to California headquarters. People cared about the climate. But at that time, 2014, 2015, they weren't going to drive an ugly electric car that didn't actually get them to where they needed to go. And that's the gap that Tesla resolved. It was a better car that just happened to be electric. There wasn't any sort of false choice. And then I went to a social safety network in New York City. Their vision was supposedly to rebuild 911. But the platform grew when people were scared enough to open the app, but not so scared that they would delete it. And the incentives, again, drove the outcome. And I left. Then I started my own nonprofit because I wanted to help close the gap between young people intending to vote, but not actually voting. Historically, we were very bad at this. And so we pioneered a new way to incentivize voter registration, which has since been used by Michelle Obama's When We All Vote, Headcount, in partnership with a bunch of A-list celebrities, and our own campaigns. And we've gotten over 1 million young people registered to vote. Across all of them, I've seen the same gap and the same cause incentives, and every incentive system runs on the exact same fuel, data about you that you don't own. And so this is really about a vision of the future that distributes power. Technology is the operating system of democracy. It's what we see, what we believe, whether we show up, who we trust. It all runs on this layer. And right now, that operating system is engineered to widen the gap because that gap is where their profit is. The attention economy is the most recent tangible version of this machine. And the most valuable land in the world is your attention. It's your cognitive space, and you don't own it. They all hold models of you that are good enough to predict you and to test you and to steer you, but you don't have a model for yourself. And so I want to show you now what we're building. And I'm going to share my screen. Let's see. There we go. So this was just taken a few minutes ago as I was preparing for this demo. This is my actual day on a forecast. And essentially, hopefully, did that go away? Let me make sure it's still up. All right, here we go. So once we measured emissions, climate problems became more solvable. Once we measured nutritional information, people's diets improved. But right now, no one has ever measured your attention or your behavior from your side. And that's where we're really starting off. So to start, this is a dashboard of my actual day on my Mac. And this line represents my attention, how focused I was to how disengaged I was. And it's all measured on device. None of this goes anywhere. And what you can see is that as my afternoon went on, intention was forecasting that I was actually going to have a deep window of focus. We track all kinds of signals across your device, including your cursor movements, your keystrokes, and these reveal all kinds of patterns. You can also connect your calendars, your other devices, things like that. And it functions a bit like forecast for your weather. Now, this is the really cool part. When you know what you want to do, you can just tell intention and it'll actually reconfigure your desktop around that intention. It's blurring out the distracting screens in the background, it's keeping you on task, and it's actively monitoring to see if there's things that can help or support you. So in this case, it notices that Slack might actually be really helpful for me and I'm not paying attention to it. So it suggests to bring it in. But in another case, maybe I'm distracted. And in that case, it would actually just suggest to bring it out. And this is how intention learns. Every time you interact with it, every time you give it feedback, it's building a personal model of you. And so after a day of work, we'll notice that your activity is tapering. It's probably time for you to wrap up. And we make it really easy for you to close out your thoughts. Simply press wrap up and we queue up a bunch of things that might have been happening or relevant in the background. Say you have some agents running, say you have some missed messages from people. Intention goes through and helps you actually quickly make decisions on the things you need to lower your cognitive load. It's basically defending you from all of the competition that currently exists for your attention on your devices inherently. And the thing is at the end, this all leads to a new way to interact with your computer. So we're rebuilding the desktop first around your intentions, and then we're going to your phone and all the rest of your devices. And at the end of the day, this is really what's going to power a personal model that allows for you to have all of the technology in your life coordinate towards your intentions. And let me stop screen sharing there. Let's see. Well, there we go. And so just to finish up here, I think that this all starts basically from this idea that there's 3 stages to go. Today, I showed you a very small piece of this big puzzle. It's awareness. It's what you just saw. Fitness trackers changed behavior just by showing us this information, and intention starts the same way. Eventually, we turn into a personal model because that gap is where the money is. Their model of you is an asset. Yours should be too. Your patterns become a behavioral model of you that you own on your devices, and they get better over time. And then in the future, we'll have extension. And this is a network where these models connect. Because we don't own them, the incentives are aligned. We can still make plenty of money a ton of different ways, but critically, we can fill in this missing layer of trust where we can be pro-technology, pro-business, and pro-distributed decision-making and outcomes. The people of AI, building the frontier of AI, say this themselves. AI can only diffuse at the speed of trust. And even the most thoughtful labs' constitutions are really just charters written by the companies and revocable by just a few people there. When intention succeeds, the operating system of democracy is ratified every single day in how we live and how we decide and what we choose. And we're building towards a world where instead of losing yourself to technology, you can be confident that you can trust it. I told you at the beginning, I had probably already lost some of you because our attention spans are so bad. And while that might not have felt like a choice, it is a choice on what comes next. So 8 years ago, when I started my nonprofit called Up to Us, I thought the name was fitting because I didn't see anyone else coming around to solve these problems. And I think the same thing is still true today. If you are interested in what we're doing, go to our website. It's intention, spelled with an S. .us, and I'll put it in the chat after, and we'll love to keep you all up to date. Thank you, Mark.
Great. Thank you, Connor. Before you drop off, one quick question for you about where the data is housed and where it is stored. That one
Yes.
didn't come across clear because there's a staggering amount of data being collected here.
Yes. Okay. So it's really important. When I was at Tesla, I realized that we had all these powerful cars driving around, right? Where they were training a much bigger model by contributing little pieces of things that they'd learned as they drove throughout the world. And the same thing is exactly true here. All of your data stays on your device. And if you want to contribute your knowledge or your values to a bigger model, we can do that without any raw data or identifiable data leaving your device.
By default, Connor, the data is private, local, and yours only.
Private, local, and yours only. We literally don't own it. We can't touch it.
Okay. Huge point. Great.
Yeah.
Connor, great job. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark.
All right. To mix a few metaphors here, this is definitely going to take a village to make the change we want to see in the world, and that means we need to create a movement, something bigger than just ourselves tilting against windmills. The best movements are built with intention, with a T, and maybe with an S, And I'm really thrilled to welcome a new friend of mine, Glen Otis Brown, to the stage. Glen's wealth of experience as the CEO of Creative Commons and the CDO at the Obama Foundation means he knows of what he speaks. Glen, take it away.
Thanks, Mark. Can you hear me okay?
You bet.
Great. And can you all see my slides?
We can.
Cool. I promise not to torture you with slides, but I'm going to have them up in the background for certain parts of this. So thanks a bunch, Mark. Thanks for having me, everybody. To cut right to it, what do we mean by organizing? What do we mean by movement building here? It could mean a whole lot of things, as I'm sure a lot of y'all know on the line. I'll jump to what I'm gonna talk about, and the punchline for what I'm talking about, which is to talk about participation, and specifically to talk about mass participation, bringing people into the pursuit of the mission and bringing in a lot of them. So really focusing on to get to a lot of people coming into the pursuit of a mission, you really have to make sure to include the newcomers. You have to make sure to include the outsiders. You have to make sure to find ways to include the non-experts who may not see themselves as part of a movement at all, which is kind of the point of what I'm going to talk about. So speaking of non-experts, actually, despite Mark's great introduction, don't consider myself an expert in organizing at all or an expert in movement building at all. Hopefully that actually makes it more accessible here, what we're talking about, to those of you all who don't consider yourselves community organizers or have no expertise in organizing or movement building. You might have more than you realize. That occurred to me at different points in my career. But I think there's a great value in not being a professional organizer or a movement builder as part of this exercise. You might also think of yourself as not professionally political. Some of y'all are, obviously, and there's nothing wrong with that. But a lot of us aren't professionally political. A lot of us have certainly political passions or affiliations. Might not be, some of y'all might not be rigorously partisan. Some of you might be. Either way, that's fine. But the point I'm going to make here and the kind of movements I'm going to talk about here are going to be ones that are about democratizing. I'm really glad Mark used that word early on. Democratizing with a small d, things that definitely include politics, but might be broader or more diffuse than acute electoral politics. It might be cultural. They might come from business. We can democratize things in the culture. We can democratize things in the economy or in specific business as well. So I want to talk about one particular lesson that I lived from a different domain that's not squarely political. And in fact, I've never worked directly in politics. I worked in some political adjacent organizations, like the Obama Foundation, for example, and other kinds of civics organizations. But back then, and even now, I actually barred from working on anything that's openly advocacy in politics via 501c3 affiliations that I have at Texas Tribune and other places. So I can't even actually speak to you from the point of view of acute political advocacy. But I hope that coming from a different angle might also be interesting and might spark some ideas as well. So I could draw from experience, I've worked mostly in business and in culture nonprofits, almost exclusively in those two things. I worked at YouTube and Google, mostly YouTube. I worked at Twitter, both of those in the early days. I worked at Creative Commons in the early days, which you'll hear a lot more about in a second. And more recently, I've worked with a few different kinds of nonprofits and startups, including being an advisor to Intention, which is a great honor. But in all those things, I unexpectedly found myself working in a movement. Whether it was a for-profit movement or a nonprofit movement didn't really matter. It was all, I seemed to kind of kept being attracted to places that were about bringing people into the pursuit of the mission, bringing outsiders, users, consumers, stakeholders, whatever you call them, people who weren't actually within the walls of the organization into a campaign, into a movement to further the mission, whether that mission be for-profit, nonprofit, activist, whatever you want to call it. So I could talk about a bunch of different movement aspects of those different organizations I mentioned, but the one that Mark and I were talking about were kind of, we both kind of had a light bulb go off, was to talk a little bit about Creative Commons, which is an old dear friend of mine. Creative Commons is an organization that is 25 years old this year, 25th anniversary coming up. It's a nonprofit. It is all about copyright licenses, which I really emphasize because it's pretty nerdy inside baseball niche kind of notion of let's have a bunch of free to use DIY copyright licenses with machine readable versions attached to them that people can attach to their blogs in the olden days of blogs, that people can embed in their photographs, that people can associate with their Wikipedia contributions, that people can use to declare some rights reserved as opposed to all rights reserved, sort of a semi-copyrighted status for their knowledge, education, culture, etc. And then that they have a bunch of stuff they can draw from under semi-copyrighted terms as well. Very like DIY, pretty inside baseball, pretty much for like either tech or copyright nerds in its early days. But really, unbeknownst to me, particularly in my first couple of years there, was about a movement. And it was my first job, first long-term job at a law school and after clerking after law school. So I was like 27. It was like 2002, 2001. And I was the CEO, and Lawrence Lessig was my former professor, was the chairman. And I remember, particularly in the first year, having a lot of early conversations. Really, they were debates. They were, I wouldn't say they were fierce debates, but they were certainly spirited. A lot of them between just me and him. And we later called them the machine versus the movement debates. So the machine versus the movement. I was there thinking that we were running a utilitarian machine, that we were there to offer tools to people. There were free copyright licenses to be able to declare their copyright status in a customized way. And we had to make sure that they worked. We had to make sure they were enforceable. We had to make sure that we could measure the value of how they were being used. And were they compatible with this or that other license? And how did they work with free software licenses, et cetera? Which is fine, a fine pursuit, but I was doing it strictly in utilitarian terms of running a machine. And then at the same time, Leslie would approach it. I was measuring things in terms of human enthusiasm. Like he would say, like, how broad and fast is the buy-in? Or what's the message we're sending this week? Look at him with puzzlement, like, what were you talking? I had no idea what he was talking about. What do you mean sending a message this week? Who's echoing our message? Are people self-organizing around the message? Where's this catching on? And it was kind of comical at times because he would say things like, we should have a series of events. And there'll be, and you say, well, first we'll go here, and then we'll go there, and then we'll go there. I would literally say, I don't know what you're talking about. We're offering free copyright licenses to people. And he'd say, this is a campaign. And I'd say, well, like, are you talking about an ad campaign, a political campaign? Is it a world music tour? Like, give me an analogy to work from here. And he said, it's all of those. It's an ad campaign. It's a political campaign. It's a world music tour. And I eventually got it. Like the light bulb eventually went off, and I realized what he was talking about was don't neglect the utilitarian side of this thing. Obviously, we need to make tools that work for people, but that this was about getting people excited about stuff. And this is about bringing people into the pursuit of the mission that we were after, which was offering an alternative to copyright that actually let people have a voice in copyright, which was not an area for non-experts at the time and never had been. It was an area for industrial media people and lawyers and nerds. And suddenly we realized like we had a thing that people could make their own and have a voice in the whole copyright debate, which I'll tell you more about in a second what that was like. But in short, people were participating in the mission by making it their own, and they were tended to be outsiders and non-experts in the subject matter. So fast forward 25 years. The Creative Commons logo is in the permanent collection of the MoMA now. It has been for a while, but for dramatic effect, let's say now. And it's in an exhibit called This Is For Everyone. And I'll zoom in on where you can see it. So it's next to the @ symbol, the recycling logo, the power icon for powering on a computer, and the pride flag. Now, did we plan for this to happen? Not in your wildest dreams did we plan for this to happen, to be one of the end results of Creative Commons, let alone that like all of Wikipedia is licensed under Creative Commons and tons and tons of different kinds of open courseware from universities around the world, not to mention how many billions of photographs here, there, and everywhere. But this as a symbol of something we did not anticipate at all, and that never would have happened if we hadn't invited people into the pursuit of the mission, is the fact this was a crowd-powered phenomenon of semiotics, which I'll talk about in a second, that made it possible. So again, this exhibit's called This Is For Everyone. Great. Okay, so there's a book that I didn't read until fairly recently, maybe like 5 years ago, not in the heyday of Creative Commons, that when I picked it up on the recommendation of somebody, made me realize we had done the things that he was recommending. So this guy named Scott Goodson from Strawberry Frog branding firm, he's got this book called Uprising that's all about movement building from the point of view of a marketer. Okay, so again, from outside of politics, though he does cite some political examples. And he's got a really good formula, which I find myself using all the time to talk to people about movement building from whatever their walk of life is. It's very simple, but that's the beauty of it. It starts with step one is identifying a social restlessness. Goodson talks about this being something that usually doesn't have a name yet. People can't quite name the thing that they're restless about. But the important thing is to figure out what is that boogeyman that's bothering people. It's really kind of an anthropological point, right? Once you name that social restlessness, you come up with another name for your protagonist. What's the alternative idea? Do you give it a symbol? Do you give it a nickname? Do you give it a slogan? That helps a lot. That's the point about semiotics here. Gives people a way to adopt something and read meaning into it. The next step is you invest in your true believers. So you find the people who are going to be your proselytizers, who are going to be your crowdsource marketers, to use a advertising term, who are going to be your UGC army, who are going to be your take any pop star. They know who these people are. They all name them now, and you invest in them. And then a key part to my original point about participation. I think Goodson calls this facilitation. I call it ease of participation. How easy is it for people to get involved, particularly if they're not very expert, or they only got 5 minutes, or they only got $5, or they're not even really sure why it is they're joining, but there's a way to join. So that adds up to a movement in Goodson's articulation of it. And I think it's kind of intuitive, but it sure is a handy formula that I haven't seen articulated in a lot of other places. So I look back on the Creative Commons experience. Not that we planned it this way, but this is how it worked out. How was it a movement? So we did these steps. So the social restlessness of copyright in 2002 it was pretty binary. It was pretty black and white. The public discourse anyway was you were a pirate or you were a control freak. You were an anarchist or you were a Hollywood stooge. And there wasn't a whole lot of room for anything else. You got like the FBI warning or you got sued for downloading stuff. Or it was extreme, and there wasn't a place to have a voice about this, other than you could write an op-ed, I guess, especially if you weren't a lawyer. The alternative idea was, okay, not all rights reserved, and not anarchy. How about some rights reserved? How about like this cute little brother of the big C that had two little C's, and we put it out there, and just made that kind of an alternate symbol, directly sort of culture jamming the big C. The true believers, we just came out of the woodwork. Here's a guy who shaved a CC into his head, as I mentioned before. People getting tattoos, people buying T-shirts, very explicitly not lawyers, not copyright nerds, people who somehow, even maybe unconsciously, identified with the movement and found ways to join, which gets to the ease of participation. Part of the way we made it easy was you could grab a Creative Commons license without having to actually touch a contract. You could just grab a URL, stick it in your blog, some symbols would appear, and you kind of got the idea of what it meant. It helped to read the contract, though, and we advised people to read the contract, of course. But the ease of participation was very important. And we gave out swag. We let people grab the symbol and stick it on their blog. We let people carve it into their head. We invited people to host their own things. We invited people all around the world to start their own chapters. And before we knew it, we had 80 different languages of the licenses translated by volunteers. So can't say we planned all that, but it did map to the notion of movement pretty well. And the point I want to kind of end on here, or start on, as the case may be, is just think about Goodson in his book. I highly recommend it. It goes through a bunch of different examples of movement marketing. So like ad campaigns or marketing campaigns that borrow from social momentum or sometimes create it. But you can think about like whether from politics or from business or from any other walk of life. Like some of my favorite examples here would be like early Apple fits this perfectly. So a social restlessness think about the 1984 ad. The social restlessness in that 1984 Super Bowl commercial was computers are bad and scary and a tool of oppression, right? That was what the ad was saying. And it was feeding off of stuff like obviously 1984 and George Orwell, but also like 2001, like HAL was not a friendly computer. Apple, the alternative idea was, look, here's an apple made of rainbows. And it's like really easy to use. It has a graphical user interface and it's a bicycle of the mind. It's like totally opposite of what the pop culture connotation of was for a computer was, right? So a great alternative idea. True believers, y'all know the Apple like fanboy army, WWC, et cetera, particularly in the early days. And participation, there are endless examples there to talk about too, but a lot of it was just like the user interface. A lot of it was the retail experience later, but they were very, very good at this. Think of, I won't name names, but think of your favorite political campaigns of your favorite candidates who won, and they nail every one of these every time. And the ones that lose very often miss the second one. They don't have a crisp articulation of the alternative idea or a snappy logo or slogan that people can grab and make their own. They might have a kind of a lame one that's hard to remember. Like go down the list from the last 2 decades. It's pretty much like clockwork. The ones with snappy slogans win. Not only because of that, but it sure helps. But the part that we started with is participation. You can also think of the campaigns that make it easy for people to join, set up their own website, become a bundler, become a precinct captain, become a volunteer. There's tiers of participation for anyone who wants to get involved. And I think the same is true in a lot of startups. I think the same is true in a lot of consumer products. So it's a simple formula, but it's one that I feel like we can't ignore. And the wisdom is in the simplicity. So I'd say, like, for what we're talking about here, like, we're at a moment where politics feels like it's not really a lot of times making lanes for participation for people. People feel powerless, to use Mark's word at the beginning, the very beginning. It's a feeling of powerlessness out there. It's not just us. That's also true in tech land, right? And it's not just true in the fact that there's like a few big companies taking over everything, but like in the user interface experience of a lot of tech products now, like in AI, like there's not a way to feel like you're shaping the machine. It feels like you have a role that's like you're a data source or a wallet, right? And people recognize this. It's what the boos are coming from. So how do we create these lanes of participation in both tech and the democratic culture? We have to make them ourselves. Obviously, that's what I was going to end with. But we also have to make them for the people who care about this intersection of tech and democracy, which is everyone now. It used to be nerds who liked Creative Commons and copyright, but everyone is interested in the intersection of tech and democracy now. And most people do not consider themselves experts in either one, right? So we can do that. And I think we can also, like I learned in the early Creative Commons days, if we go about it this way, it could actually also be fun. So that's where I want to end. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Glenn. That was fantastic. I want to call up my co-founder and good friend and colleague of 30 some odd years, Kara Weber, who is one of the OGs who helped build the internet. Kara's going to talk to us about how we can get more involved.
Thanks so much, Mark, and thanks, Glenn, and Connor and Alex. I think it's super interesting to hear all of this tonight, and even more exciting to just be gathered here with all of you, starting to think about this gap. The gap is real. The need is real, and this work is connected. A movement needs true believers and participants, builders, we've been calling them. Builders need values. And values only matter when we use them. Values only, that came up in a lot of what Connor was talking about. It's the values behind what he's building that really matter here. In what we create, who we back, who we stand behind, that's when values show up, and we've got to make sure they're showing up. So that's the thread, but let's not leave inspired. Let's leave with plans to act. As Mark said, I'm Kara Weber. I started my career in tech in a dorm room at Williams College, building a company called Tripod, which is where I first met Mark. 8 companies, a venture fund, and a career spent at the intersection of building and M&A and deal making. I coach. I'm not a politician. I'm definitely a non-expert. Thank you for that, Glenn, when it comes to policy, but I am a progressive. I am a woman. I am a mom, and I am a technologist who gives a damn. And that unites us all tonight. You're not here if you're not a technologist who gives a damn. A friend texted me recently and said, "I'm so glad you're doing this. You're not just wringing your hands." And I laughed because honestly, I spent a long time after November 2024 doing exactly that. For me, that looked like pulling the covers up and complaining to people who already agreed with me, occasionally reposting something and feeling briefly righteous. And as I was building my fluency in despair, I was losing my fluency in action. At some point, I had to be honest with myself. I wasn't powerless. I was just really comfortable with paralysis. And then I got a little sick of my sad little self. Maybe you haven't had that experience. Maybe you have. Maybe you haven't been trying or you tried to feel like you're doing things, but it doesn't feel like it's moving the needle. And that's exactly the gap we're here to close right now in this minute. Because there's something almost wasteful about a room full of people who know how to build, scale, ship, activate as only donors or, I'd say tweeters. I don't know what we say now. Threaders, probably not a lot of Xers. You have more to give than that, and we want it. So if tonight moved something in you, the way this work has moved something in me and unleashed something in me, I want to ask you not to leave that here. We will offer specific ways to activate each time we gather. It is time to step up and step in. And here are 3 ways for you to activate now. First, back someone. If Alex inspired you tonight, support his campaign. Donate, volunteer, make calls, spread the word, canvass, vote. And if your energy belongs with another candidate who shares our commitment to tech and progressive values, support them. But don't stop at admiration. Reach out, roll up your sleeves, back someone. The second way you can activate right now, grow the room we're in. These gatherings will be the gateway. This is where isolated frustration can become collective action. Our next gathering will be on July 28th. Please commit to bringing 5 or 10 people. And I mean, seriously, right now, scribble down or get your phone and whatever. Scribble down names right now. And as soon as we update the website with the new date and the new registration form, which will probably be tomorrow, we'll let you know. And that's when you send the text, the email, the LinkedIn message. That's how this first we of us gathering becomes a real movement. Third way to activate, raise your hand. This movement doesn't just happen if it's Mark and I and a few others, and there have been several others. We're just the ones who talk the most. But it doesn't happen if it's this small group because, we have day jobs. We want you. We need you. So if you want to help build this, please go to techfordemocracy.com and fill out the little form at the bottom of the page. You can suggest a speaker, give us feedback on tonight's event, or just raise your hand to say you're in. Tell us how you want to participate. Give us ideas. Raise your hand. Glenn talked about the moment a community stops feeling like isolated individuals and starts feeling like a we. And I hope that's what tonight is. It's our first we. So if you've been waiting for the sign that there's the moment to do more, this is it. Your skills, your voice, your network, your values, democracy needs them. It's time to step up and step in. Thank you all so much for being here.
All right, Kara, I just ran through the fucking wall. Thank you so much for the energy and the support that you're bringing. I want to tell you, just give a quick shout out to a couple other folks: Jason Krebs, Michelle Pay, Aziz Hassan, John McCarthy, Tim Dirks, Richie Glassberg, Mark Goldberg, Satish Daniel, Jennifer McFadden. They've been helping a lot. And so let me tell you, we're just getting started. And we believe strongly that every policy decision of consequence is now a technology decision, which means the people making those decisions need to understand tech or be guided by people who do and who are accountable to everyone, not just shareholders. We believe every lawmaker and regulator needs either genuine tech literacy or genuine tech accountability. We believe the gains from innovation should be broadly shared. I thought Alex did a nice job talking about that. And we believe democracy should be harder to hack technically and politically. We believe every kid in every zip code deserves equal access to what technology can provide. And from our perspective, these are not radical positions. Frankly, they are the minimum. So if there's a fire inside of you that has been urging you to do something, raise your hand, please, and let us know how you can help. We have a lot of work to do. And I think you probably can see that we have initiative and inertia, but we need a lot of help. Our next event is Tuesday, July 28th. Mark it down, bring 10 people. The people who built the internet believed it could distribute power instead of concentrate it. And that's an idea that we feel strongly is worth fighting for. and we're just getting started. So the fact that you're here tonight means we're already stronger than we were this morning. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful night.